as we do these calls, we want to also be resourceful. So what you think maybe is just kind of a obvious thing may not be an obvious thing to someone else who is on the call, who is wrestling with something, problem solving, etc. So we're going to take 5 minutes. You can unmute and kind of say, hey, this is what's up. And that would be awesome. So ready, go. Something you've seen, heard, or otherwise recently that might be helpful for everybody to hear about. Wow, the ideas are just flowing today. It's amazing. Well, it could actually be like a good 1 minute, and then we'll just move on.
I'll share something real quick. If
Love
you
it.
guys are
Thank you.
readers, here's a book that
Oh,
I've been reading. If you care about like donor development, you oversee generosity. So I don't know if that's so
yeah,
sustainable
we can see
giving,
it.
talking a lot about subscription economy and how that should be changing our method when it comes to generosity, donor development, things like that. So it's been a really good read so far.
Love that. Love that. Somebody else before we get to Kay and his group. Anybody? Something you're reading? I don't know if any of you guys listen to Andy Stanley's leadership podcast. Pretty recently, he had Jim Collins on there, who most of us know from Good to Great, but he kind of disappeared, or we thought he disappeared after that. But he's been researching life, and so the title and the podcast is great, but it's really been something that a lot of us, Becker had recommended to listen. A lot of us have been listening to. So if you're looking for something kind of into summer, it's kind of a combination of life narrative of some people that he researched and Jim Collins kind of heady research, but he really talks about how we find our encoding, how we find our framing. And we believe, obviously, from a God perspective, that there's an element of that in there. He also talks about cliffs, which are really moments in life where you kind of go into a new season and the fog that follows. So it's very helpful. I'm about two-thirds of the way through it now. So if you're looking for something along with what Nate said to read, it might be great. Minute or two more.
Hey, Lee, I want to recommend a book. This guy
Please
wrote it. The title of it is Seasons of Life and Leadership.
stop.
And a little bit of a throwback. So we're actually in the last chapter. We walked through the last few months with our staff, and it's been eye-opening and fascinating at the same time. So I know it came out about a year ago, but if you've not taken your team through it, it's an eye-opener and it helps to really bring the synergy. And one of these days, we're going to get you to do a pop-in, Lee, and just kind of walk us through some things in terms of putting a period on it. But great study.
Love it. I didn't set Mike up for that, by the way. So that was not a setup. And if you buy books, man, I'll be able to get a cup of coffee tomorrow. So it'll be awesome. If like five of you buy a book, it'll pay for my coffee in the morning. So there you go. Mike, I'm seriously glad that it's been helpful. If you are looking for something to lead your team through even this fall, I think Mike would say it would be a great not only a good read, but a great conversation piece. Okay. One more. Going once,
I'll plug one.
please.
Am I on? I can't see myself, but yeah, my friend Brian Drinkwine just wrote a new
There you
book
are.
called Kingdom Over Empire: Recovering the Gospel from Political Captivity. So if you're
Okay.
dealing with spiritual formation and politics in your church, it's a fantastic read.
What's the last name there, Hall?
Drinkwine.
Great. Oh, that's an interesting. I
Yeah,
like his name.
ironically, he planted a church in Corona.
Ironically, drink wine in Corona. Love it. Awesome.
Can I
All
throw?
right, Kay. No, please go, Taylor. Please.
We're talking about staff development, and we like to do like a fall retreat for our staff. But our staff has grown a lot since the last time we did one, and we're like, how can we make this work financially? Anyway, talk with some other XPs, and this idea came up that we're going to try where you actually just swap with another church. So find another church in your area that's maybe a little further out, so you can have a nice drive to it. Hang out along the way, and another church had said they also have like the lead pastors swap for the first 15 minutes and give a little devotional, and then they go back with their teams. So there's ideas like that, but just a way to keep it affordable for our team and being in a different space to dream and plan and strategize for the next year.
Love it. Appreciate that. All right, Kay, I'm going to throw to you, but before I do that, let me do this. One of the things we wanted to, we'll do this at the end. I'm going to throw to Kay. Kay, I'm just going to throw it to you because I don't want to overstep and say something that's not in line with what you've been doing because it's fantastic. As part of our 5 good minutes, I asked Kay, and he may have other people contribute to kind of a creative ideation that he's been working on and using some of our team to beta it. And so I want to tag our 5 big minutes on with Kay kind of sharing with you guys some of the stuff that he's been working on to help you get more efficient. So I'm going to throw it to you, Kay.
Sounds good. Yeah, that 5 minutes, by the way, so we'll do that on a regular basis. And so if you think about something that you've written down and something that you've done or tried, it doesn't even have to be like, okay, we've figured it out and we've understood and know the ROI on it, but even just as an idea, it just triggers a lot of things for us, for the whole network. And so thanks for sharing there. Yeah, one of the things that we hear over and over again when we work with churches that basically are trying to move the ball down the field when it comes to vision and strategy is that obviously meetings are a necessary evil of what we have to do to be able to get people on track and to be able to get alignment. So alignment is a word that we use a lot at Growmentum. Because it is truly what nobody intends to be misaligned. Everybody has the best intentions to be able to go forward in everything that they do. And yet at the same time, what happens is that if we don't have those meetings, if we don't have those alignment conversations, then everybody goes with their best intentions towards misalignment. And so with that, we have the best intentions with everything. So everybody, everything is important. Everything is discussed. But whether we have it in a meeting or whether we have it in a hallway conversation, whether we have it in a Slack thread or an email, we have it in all different type of places. And we've been seeing the pain points of that because what happens is it's like, wait, was that in a text that we got that? Was that in a Slack? Was that in an email? Was that just a conversation that I had with somebody? Was that in an actual meeting? And so one of the things that the problem that we wanted to solve around this as we started looking at this was to be able to say, okay, how do we actually bring more intentionalities to the meetings that we have? For many of you, maybe it's actually you have too many meetings, or maybe it's actually bringing more focus and clarity towards those meetings. For many of you, actually, it's like we don't have enough meetings. We actually just do walk-bys and hallway conversations. And so I think it's a little bit of both, as we've just discovered as we've been working with churches. And so with all of that, we one of our phrases and really our mission statement is to partner with you and to help you accomplish your mission by helping you work on it, not just in it. And we've talked about the work on it a lot here. Work on it is that zooming out and making sure that we're on the same page, that we're aligned, we're going in the right direction, because the in it work literally is the daily task, the weekly task, everything that needs to happen in order for the weekend to happen. So with all of that, one of the things that we decided to do is we created this software solution to be able to help manage that. So that work on it, it's called Work On It app. And when we say app, we mean a software solution. It's on the website, it's on your phone, it's on your iPad, wherever you want to do. And it really does then capture your one-on-ones, your reoccurring meetings. It captures your parking lot stuff from like, I've got this and I've got to talk to that person and I could walk to that person's desk, or I can put it in the parking lot for my next conversation. And so I'm sure that you have your own systems around this, whether it be you put it in your to-do app or whether you put it in a Google Sheet or a doc. You have all those things. But there was value to be able to bring it all together in one shop-stop place. And then we then decided to actually build a lot of integrations in it. It now ties into your Google Calendar. It brings in your Granola AI meeting notes. It can go and push out to Slack. And if you use Todoist or Apple Reminders, it'll connect to all of those things. And so with all of that, it's been a great, we've had now several churches have now joined and on board, and we haven't even publicly announced it yet. And so they've been using some of these features features and actually the platform for a little bit now. And so, in fact, I actually want to highlight two of them. And if you guys could share a little bit about your experience on work on it, and a little bit about what the problem it solved for you and maybe what you love most about it. So Kelly is one of the executive pastors at Real Life Church, which we get to work really closely together. And she is an amazing leader, and she has been such an incredible teammate in the last 6 months that she's been on staff with us. And so, Kelly, you've been now using this for now several months. And so I'd love for you to share a little bit about your perspective and your experience with the Work On It app.
Yeah, totally. It is incredible. I think like it's really helped me streamline so many thoughts, so many conversations, so many different steps that I'm in and different processes. And so I think my favorite thing about it is that I can go back and refer to past things. I can check off things that have been done. I can leave things unchecked that are still in process. I love the parking lot. I use it all the time. It also has a to-do list so that it reminds me what I need to be doing. It syncs to my calendar. We're able to use Granola with it, and so it'll kind of give me a summary after every meeting so that I can just stay on track. And it provides so much more accountability, not just for me, but for my team as well. So it's kind of like a built-in accountability thing as well. So I have loved it. It has revolutionized, I think, our whole leadership team. And we've been using it, and I now probably wouldn't use anything else at this point.
Yeah.
Okay, I stopped
Awesome.
sharing because I don't know if you want to share your
Great.
screen there and show. That would
Yeah.
be great.
Fantastic. Yeah, great, Kelly. Thanks for sharing it. Obviously, using it from a meeting perspective as well as even one-on-ones, which then obviously that should all tie into each other for accountability and support and alignment towards the mission and the direction of the strategies that we've all agreed upon, right? So great. And then Brendan from South Dakota has been using it for a little bit and has got their whole team on that as well. So when you think South Dakota, you don't think a multi-site church with over 3,000 people, but they've got their whole team using this. And so it's pretty cool. So could you speak a little bit about your experience with it, Brendan?
Yeah, absolutely. Give a quick backstory without taking up a ton of time here. But I reached out to Kay, gosh, what was that, 4 months ago, maybe? And asked him, hey, I'm digging into some of this like vibe coding stuff. I'm probably a little late. Who do you know that's doing this sort of thing? And he was like, me, I've been doing this sort of thing. So we got on the call real quick and ran through a couple ideas. But the whole thing that spurred that conversation was, we had been using a tool that does some of this and, had been getting increasingly expensive for what it's providing. I was like, man, I'm just going to design something for our team. And then I realized Kay had already been working on it. I was like, cool, I'll just pay him to do it. So this is awesome. So we get into it having come from another platform again that does something semi-similar, and I've just been blown away at the ease of use, the transition for our team to jump on. It's a super intuitive application, so like you just, which unfortunately is not always the case with some of these. But you just get into it and you just pretty immediately know, oh yeah, this is what this does. And one of the cool things though that we've been working on is just we've all sat in those meetings where it's supposed to be a collaborative conversation. We've got someone or maybe multiple people taking notes. Maybe you're using an AI note taker like Granola. But inevitably, there is still like the administrative side of, okay, how do you get those notes into the right places to make sure everyone sees them? Then how do you follow up on all of those things you said you were going to do? Because I'm sure you guys experience this, but the last thing I want to do is walk into the next meeting, ask about an update on a thing, and then someone say, wait, I didn't even realize, right? I was supposed to be doing that. So just the next step stuff that's automated, the Granola integration that now allows you to drop specific notes into the note for that specific agenda item rather than just being a general summary is absolutely incredible. Has saved our team a ton of time, right? Like copying and pasting notes into the right places. And it's been awesome. So it's a much more user-friendly calendar integration, which with our previous app was not the case. It was like the bane of my existence. So just a huge fan of what Kay's doing. And it's also significantly cheaper because these guys love the local church and want to provide, value tools at a reasonable price. So I'm a big fan of it.
Great. Thanks, Brendan. Yeah. So with that, let's do a little bit of a short demo. And this is basically what the app looks like. So I had a little fun playing with the names and the narratives and the agendas. So we got Randy Stanley here. We've got Joby Martini. We've got Tim Killerman. So we've got a lot of people here that basically are on these agendas. And so you can see basically you can see the different meetings that you have. And so let's just look on an average work in it meeting, like your weekly staff meeting or your weekly, lead team meeting. Basically, what you can see is the first thing that you can see is all the participants in that meeting. And then you can actually even see a little bit more about them and their Enneagram type or their working genius or whatever your flavor of assessments is around those individuals. And you can even see that Chandler Morikawa is there too. So with that, you can see the weekend recap. So, this is any agenda items that you would want to put in there. And then basically everybody commenting on those type of things, right? So very, very easy to be able to put in agenda items. You literally just add another agenda item. You make it reoccurring if you want to continually, do that. You can make it private. And that's one of the things that I like to do is have a public agenda with a one-on-one individual, but also there might be one or two private agenda items that I want to actually just save for my conversation with them. And I don't want them to see it on the agenda necessarily. As we've talked about granola meeting summaries will all come into play there too, but you can put action items. And then when you add an action item to yourself, it'll actually then go into your tasks so that you can actually manage your tasks in that way. And it'll tell you when it's overdue or not overdue or when it's due and all those type of things. And so with that, you can comment, you can, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, talk about the parking lot real quick.
Yep. So the parking lot is one of our favorite features because basically in the parking lot, you can have, let's say, for example, you have reoccurring one-on-one meetings with these individuals and you have team meetings with, let's say, these teams. And what you can do is you can literally say, all right, these are the things that I want to put on the parking lot. And you're not ready to put it on the agenda yet, but you just want a place to dump information and ideas. And so, or let's say, for example, if something was in an agenda you didn't get to and you want to push it back to the parking lot, you can do that very easily into the platform. And so with all of that being said, basically the platform is a holding place for conversations because we want to prepare you to be able to have great meetings. And that actually does take some prep work and prep time. But at the same time, if you're all throughout thinking about something and then you just kind of batch it into the parking lot, then it'll be open and available for the next one-on-one meeting that you have. So literally you can say, all right, so I banked one. And so now, we need to just add that to the agenda. And so we can add that to the agenda very quickly. If we didn't get to that agenda, we can kick it back to the parking lot. And then basically it'll be saved for the next meeting or whenever you want to get to that, right? So that's what the parking lot is. Just a couple more things. It is tied to your calendar system. So let's say if you had a coffee with the church planter on your calendar, then you can actually set up a meeting there so that way literally you can add any
or not, right, Kate? Like if you don't want to add it to it, right? It just shows up as, do I need to add this or not?
Correct. Because these are all the calendars, things in your calendar, and you can add it to the meeting or not. And so you can look at all your past meetings. And one of the things that Kelly, I think, highlighted was looking at a meeting and saying, okay, hey, what did we discuss last week? Okay, that's what we discussed. What about the week before? Okay, got it. And we had these action items that people looks like they didn't finish those action items. And so it's all in one place to be able to do that. Integrations, calendar, Granola, Claude, Todoist, Apple Reminders. We've got Rock, Planning Center integration is coming soon. We've got a lot of different things. The last thing that I'll show you, and then we'll open it up for any questions that you might have, is we wanted to actually show this, to be able to say, we value the work on it meetings. We want you to do it at least monthly. And we always say, make sure you separate your work on it meetings with your work in it meetings, because whenever you do both of them in the same meeting, the in it always gets dominated and you never get to the on it. And so when you have a dedicated at least once a month meeting, that you would actually take time to say, hey, what ground have we gained in this last month? What are the stories? What are the wins that have moved us forward towards the mission from the last month? Looking at your scorecard or dashboards, the lead indicators that help us understand of where we're at today for tomorrow. That's really important because sometimes I see people who are reviewing it on a weekly basis, and that's fine, but things won't really change so much on a weekly basis. In fact, if you hang on your data on a weekly basis, you might get too emotionally tied to it. It's like, man, today is really down, or today is really up. And so it's zooming out a little bit more to be able to say, okay, hey, you might want to do some of those things, but really on a monthly basis, review that in that kind of way. The rocks, we've talked a lot about rocks. Are you on track with those rocks? Are you off track with those rocks, and scoring those? And then friction points. We've talked a lot about friction on these calls, and to be able to say, okay, so what's the friction point in which we are bumping up against to be able to get to our vision? And then brief back. Lee, you want to tell them what brief back is? We've talked here and there about it, but it's been a while.
Yeah. Basically, the reason we encourage, and part of what I love about what Kay's doing is it's integrating a lot of the language that it in our relationship as a group here, but also if we're working directly with one of our team that's there. Briefback's one of those things where we learned about it years ago as a law enforcement term. It basically, in summary, is if they're going to do a team, they're going to take down a drug house that is around the corner, that they're going to actually assign action items during their run through. But the last thing they do before they leave the room is what's called a brief back, which is everybody actually repeating back from their perspective what they heard they are assigned to do or their action items as they leave. It's a great habit for your team to get into, especially if you have different working geniuses or thinking wavelengths in the room. Sometimes they need clarity. And so that brief back will bring clarity or show lack of clarity. And so we like to include it, and I love that Kay's included it here, as just basically the last thing on most agendas is let's make sure we brief back before we kind of just all get up and stumble out of the room and we're not really sure what we decided. Now, the way he's designed this with the action items and the follow-ups will help a bit with that if you're capturing it in real time, but it's still important to do that.
Cool.
Great.
All right.
So guys, on the thing there, I put on the chat, but some of you aren't in the chat. We don't have time for Kay to go through every part of this because it's awesome. And so what we want to do is, if this is something that's intriguing to you, something that you need, just in the chat, would you just put, and I don't need all the harassment that's going on in the chat, just put work on it there. And that way, Kay or one of the team members will follow up and kind of spend 30 minutes with you, deep diving into what that will look like and talk about what that looks like. Okay. Kay, you want to wrap it that way?
Great. Yeah. So we'll follow back up with you if you guys are interested in this way. As far as the pricing model on it, we literally, I mean, if you would compare it to anything else that's out there, even in the, church space wise, it's going to be at a fraction of the cost because we just wanted to make it accessible to our network. And so you can take a look at that, but basically find out more information about it on workonit.org. Workonit.org is where the website is on that. And so you can find out information, you can reach out from that way, but then also at the same time, we'll follow up with an email for anybody that said to work on it. There's features that are being added on almost like a weekly basis. And so just know that it's going to be constantly improving. So we wanted to share that resource to you guys.
Guys, seriously, and Kay wouldn't say this, but like, this is what's amazing about it is it really does connect to a lot of the problems that you guys are, and Brendan touched on it. It's like everything's kind of like a bit of here and a bit here, but what Kay's done over the last few months is put something that generally works for what we're hearing. And then what he said there at the end is really important, is it's so manageable that as you get into it and as this becomes a tool on this side of things, he wants to make sure, as Kelly's saying, hey, what about this? And can we add this? And this is an element that the ability for us to, it's almost open source in some ways, to be able to continue to improve it as you guys use it will be there. And it'll be something within our network that'll be fantastic. So slow clap for Kay. Thank you. All right. You don't even have to mute. See, there it is. It's seriously strong. All right. So the last 30 we have together, a lot of you subscribe to our Fuel, where we put out content on Mondays. If you're not subscribed to it, put something in the chat and somebody will dump it. But Monday morning, we try to put out something that's not just like, hey, here's something for you to read, but really the design is for you to take that process it individually. And then also, we've all been that person that has that staff meeting on Monday afternoon or Tuesday morning, and you want to do some development or you want to have some conversation with your team, and you're like, I don't know what to talk about this week. And so kind of the purpose of the Monday as well is for you to go, okay, I can lift that and I can take credit for it. I can lift that and I can take it into the room and have a conversation. But this week we did something that we felt like maybe this is a conversation we should have together on the call. And we called it Permission to Disappoint. And so give me grace for a moment just to kind of share the backstory for those of you who didn't get a chance to actually read it in real time. But the backstory on it is a few years ago, John Crist and his team called the church that I was serving at that time. And because of my role as the executive pastor there, any of those calls that came in, we want to do a concert, we want to do this, we want to do any of the facility usage, big production type things always came over my desk or via email. And typically, in most cases, our response would have been no, not because we were just being jerky about it, but because, as most of you know, as churches get to a certain scale, saying yes to any of those things has a domino effect that can impact not just our teams, but can impact the ministry that we're invested in, staying on mission. And so typically it was pretty much a no, to the point where sometimes I didn't even get it because my executive assistant would just reply back, we're not going to do that. Somehow this one got to me. And I'll remember the moment where it came in and there were different members of my team that happened to be in the room at the time. And I said, hey, John Crist team. And he was very popular. This was pre-fall, pre-revival of John Crist. He was pretty popular at that time. And in the room, they were like, man, that would be awesome. Let's freaking do it. It'd be so fun. Da, 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 da. And so kind of that idea. I'm not blaming them. I was kind of like, yeah, this sounds like it'd be kind of cool evening. And in the email, you guys, and all of you have gotten these, it literally was like, this will be the simplest event that you guys have ever done. All we need is a stage and a microphone. It'll be great. We'll handle all the things, the tickets, da 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 da. Right? And so somehow, long story short, we green lighted this Tuesday night comedy show, and it was a few months off. And then the process began. And so over the next few months, as it ramped up, the amount of work that was involved in that said one night event that was the simplest thing we have ever done ramped up as well. The part that I didn't include in the Monday Fuel was protecting myself, was that I actually ended up not being present on campus or in town on that Tuesday night. So that even makes it worse. So I left doing whatever Lee's doing around the world. And I started to get texts throughout the day that were not appropriate even to talk about on this Zoom call from some of my team members as they were catering and running John's team around town, and things were now getting disassembled on our stage and da 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 da. And guess what, you guys? How full do you think the room was? Bro, it was, we had at that time probably over 2,000 seats. Every seat was full, sold out. Every Christian in Las Vegas made their way to that auditorium. It was great for John's team. I'm sure economically they had a great night, great crowd. And my team put in probably a 20-hour day on that Tuesday with Sunday coming. And so that story I tell because you may not have something as dramatic as that, or that may just be a story that you need to tuck away for the next email or phone call that you get. But it's always stuck with me when we do ROI. If any of you have done the missional return on investment, where we talk about resource over missional impact, typically I'll get around to that story, because as far as ROI, low or high, it would have been the highest thing that we probably have ever done. And as far as actual Matthew 28 Great Commission impact, nothing wrong with Christians getting together and laughing. I'm not against that. But as far as us being on mission, it was so far left, it was off the chart as far as accomplishing our mission, especially when you put it against the ROI. So I say all of that just to open it up to you guys with the idea that sometimes we as leaders are actually called to disappoint people. And I think part of what I stumbled into in that moment was my inability to disappoint people, or or maybe disappoint myself. I'm not really sure, but it's pretty interesting how we do that, how we tend to do that. And so the thought that I really had, and maybe some of the principles that we can talk about over the last 15 minutes together, is sometimes we make decisions because we somehow believe that we should pursue the fact that nobody is upset, right? And if we live with this myth that if we will lead well, if we will do things well, if we will communicate well, and nobody's upset, I must be doing this right. And I want to hand to you the evidence today that that is actually true, because no one's upset is only a temperature gauge of the room at the moment, right? It's not necessarily a lens into the future of that you're trying to actually build towards with your vision and your mission. And so when you think about all of the stuff that my team had to go to, the room was packed and we were way off mission. And plus the people who ended up having to carry the weight of me not being willing to disappoint both them and other people were now running on empty. And they were, frankly, it took me a little repair work because they were a little resentful of me being the one that green lighted this thing. And I ended up actually disappointing the people that I could least afford to disappoint, right? And so I spent a little bit of the economy of their trust in an effort to, instead of being willing to make myself uncomfortable. So I want to talk about that just for a minute and allow you to unmute. I want you guys to even ask that question for yourself. Like, where are the moments? Are there things right now that you are wrestling with that you need to really make the hard call around? That if you're honest, there may be some level of lacking the courage to disappoint that is impacting sort of the process by which you are making that decision. Anybody want to offer themselves on the altar of vulnerability at the moment? How's that played in your life?
I'll just chime in, Lee, to say that I'm really glad that
Michelle,
you're talking about
Michelle, be careful here, okay?
You gonna ready to bleep me out here?
We got the beep button.
Yeah, I was just telling somebody this Sunday who used to be on our staff who was just talking to me about my role. And I said, I think on any given week, there's at least one person at the church who's mad at me for something
Okay.
that I've decided or something that I said no to. And I said to them, I'm thankful that I only answer to God because
Right.
most people just don't understand the context of my decision making. And they are unwilling to come to me and just say, hey, can you explain to me a little bit more about that decision? And if they would have the courage or the maturity to come and talk to me, I could probably help like walk it out. But most people can't do that and they just choose to be mad. And so it's just like part of the role, having people upset and
Michelle, you
disappointed.
say it's part of the role, but stay unmuted for a minute. How have you, if I can ask you, and I didn't prep you for this, to kind of look back on that journey? I think we have to be honest. Again, none of us want to disappoint people. And please, on the call, hear me. I'm not saying go back to your offices and work really hard to disappoint people. That's not the point. I'm saying we have to have the ability to disappoint. Michelle, do you think there was a learning curve for you? And maybe I'm asking a hard question for you to answer, but as far as getting to the point, not where you didn't care, but where you knew the decision was greater, what I just said, than your comfort of keeping everybody happy.
There's every yes and no has a cost to it.
Okay.
So I just have to choose what's more important to me. So like I was listening to your example, I'm like, oh, you say yes to this group, the cost is staff culture.
Yeah.
Your staff is working 20 hours, so then you're probably going to have to give them a day and a half off in the future, and then they're
Flex
going to go
time.
back. Yeah, and they're going to be like, Lee didn't even show up. He just ran off and we had to do all the work. All of that is a huge cost. So with
Correct.
every decision, you have to weigh out like what is this going to cost me on either end? So really thinking it through. So I had to learn that okay, short term me feeling good or me basically deciding that I would
Right.
rather escape from the hard conversation of saying no versus what am I giving up that is going to be a bigger pain in the future?
Love it. One other thing, there's John's picture. This kind of is the quote that I mentioned earlier that resonates with what Michelle just kind of confirmed in her own experience, right? When our yes comes from not wanting to disappoint anyone, we spend our team's trust to ensure our own comfort. It's a pretty big deal, right? When we know that we now have to back that up and move through that. Here's kind of a thing that I think is important is kind of the Nehemiah test. Um, it's the story in Nehemiah where he's being asked to come down and to pause the work and to step off of the wall. I think it's the best analogy where we all quote, "I'm doing a great work and cannot come down." But unfortunately, that's an easy verse to put on the wall or kind of throw out there. But I think if you dig into it a little bit more, there is a cost to Nehemiah 6:3 kind of leadership, right? There's a cost to saying, no, this is the great work. For example, one of the things that we've done with many of your teams is we've talked about, are you really clear on what your values are? Do you have clarity around your distinctives as an organization? And the reason we've pressed into that, probably overkill, but importantly with most of your teams, is because part of your decision-making process that may or may not disappoint people always should be at least a reflection of this decision I'm making, this thing I'm not just putting on the calendar, but this staff person I'm hiring, this ministry pivot that we're making to a different direction. We have to always run it through the filter of our values. The way we typically say it is your values should drive your yeses and your nos. And sometimes we have to say no to really, really awesome things because in your particular set of distinctive values, that thing should not be happening. It's not appropriate for that moment. And so that's why the Nehemiah thing is so important for us. And so clarity beats urgency. So sometimes making sure that you're processing what you're saying yes or no to. Rob Hall and I were exchanging texts last night, and I still owe him a text because he was pretty excited. Look, he's all excited. He's smiling. He's pretty excited because he sat down with Scott and others. He's like, we planned the entire year, like 12 months, right? And it's like, preemptively. And that's a big win for the team there at New North, for our team there. But in reality, there's probably a little bit of a percolating or a marinating season that now needs to happen, right? That needs to set in those decisions around here's what we said, but we need to process that a little bit through the distinctives of our values and through the distinctives of all of these things that we put on the calendar worthy, or using the new terminology, is it really drawing us off of the wall? Okay, so here's the wall test. This is probably the most important thing we're going to talk about today, is these three things. And so, I mean, literally, like, screenshot it if you want. Like, these are the three clarifying questions that I think can help a lot of you as you navigate disappointment. And then I'm going to open it up for conversation. So be thinking about how you want to add to this in the last 10 minutes. Wall test, three clarifying questions. Number one is the call question. That would include our vision, values, and our mission. It's what's the great work that we're actually, you can make it personal or make it corporate, that we're actually assigned to be doing right now. What is the highest priority of things that we are trying to accomplish, right? For example, if you are working really hard in your 1-year focus right now to just re-engage, reinvent, and re-energize your guest connection process, how you identify, how you move people through Pathway, that might be a major focus for you and your team right now. And there may be other things that start to come into play. And at this point, you may have to say, that is not the great work that we are assigned to in this given moment as a focus. Now, understanding, we all have the Matthew 28, the Great Commission, greatest work, and that's ultimately the calling. And I get that, but I want to hone it down just a little bit more, because I think some of us are really good at shoving everything under it's how we're accomplishing our mission. And so we can kind of spin everything into that space. And so I think sometimes we have to be more focused on what are we directly called to do right now in this season. The work on it that Kay was talking about earlier. That's the call question. The second one is the voice question. Where is this coming from? Who's asking me? What are the implications of that? What do they lose? Who's asking me to come down, and what do they lose if I say no? That's kind of that voice question that is important for us to ask, because it does play into it as far as who is it that's actually asking us to come down. Compare honestly to what your team loses if you say yes. Like their voice in your life, or that request that's coming in, or that direction, or maybe the best word is strategy. What is the cost there? Because the last one speaks to Michelle's point earlier. I just called it the invoice question. I'm not sure I like it or not yet, but I kind of do. If I say yes to this, or if we as a team say yes to this, who pays for it? And I don't mean financially, but who pays the highest cost? And did they even get to weigh into what the implications of that mean? Because the wall test will also help you understand, is this a moment where unfortunately somebody's going to be disappointed, but ultimately the mission of the organization is going to go forward? Okay. So let's talk a little bit about this. Feedback, thoughts, confessions, questions. Kay, Nate, any of the guys on the team, or anybody on the call. We have 10 minutes of open conversation around this. Ready, go.
Yeah, so this is Mark Sundstrom out in South
Hi, Mark.
Dakota, and thanks for doing this. It reminds me of something. I was really conflict avoidant early in my leadership, and I had a coach who told me, leadership is really disappointing people at a rate that they can stand, to sort of provide a corrective for that. And I love the clarity of the three questions, and realizing that, like, some people, if they're just so habitually disappointed in us, that maybe just means they're not a fit for our organization. They're not a fit for our mission. And it's okay if they go, and God might actually prune some people through our frequent disappointing of them, and they can go somewhere else where they're less disappointed. Obviously we don't want that for like baby Christians and people that are spiritually vulnerable, but I think sometimes that's not who we're talking about, that's so consistently disappointed, if we're honest. And so this has been really helpful and really clarifying with the who we lose if we say no, and who pays for it when we
say yes.
When we say yes. So thanks for this.
Yeah. Thanks, Mark. I don't know why the Dakotas are coming in so hot recently, but I didn't know anybody lived there. Maybe everybody who lives in the Dakotas is actually on this call right now. I don't know. So there you go.
Getting close. We're getting close.
Somebody else?
I do want to add one more thing as I was thinking about this. What has given me the confidence to say no is I know I have the 100% backing of my lead pastor, because what can happen is, and people have said, well, I will go after getting a no from me. They will say, well, I'm going to ask Andrew. And I'm saying, well, he's actually going to defer back to me. And if he would give a different answer, that would basically cut out my leadership, and I would probably be more afraid to say no to people.
Yeah. If dad says no, I'm going to go talk to mom, or vice versa. That's kind of the idea, right? And so, Michelle, how do you make sure, and that sounds great, and it is that you guys are aligned. How do you make sure, how have you learned to make sure that those things are communicated? Because I think that there are some things that our staff does, but sometimes that happens inadvertently. A yes becomes a no in a different area, or a no becomes a yes when there's some shared leadership.
I think our lead pastor, we have a lot of clarity on our roles.
Okay.
Like anything that has to do with decisions in the organization, he is really good with saying, I don't know anything, ask Michelle. And so he'll punt people to me all the time. So that's really helpful that he just sticks with preaching and like overall leadership with me. And I try to do my best of leading up. Like every single weekend, just letting know, like, by the way, this is what I said no to in case anybody comes to you. I've
Got
already
it.
said no to these things. I've already decided these things. If you want to do something different, let me know. I can go back around. But I thought
Perfect.
this is what you would want as well. And he's like, yes.
So at some point, the culture will, if you live this out fully, the culture will begin to shift, hopefully, to where it becomes less and less of an issue, and there's clarity around leadership and all of that. It's great.
Mhm.
Somebody else?
Hey, Lee.
Yes, please.
Yeah, Lee. Just a question. I'd be curious to know if there's any other XPs on here that have a very strong speaking role at the church as well, in terms of leveraging that influence to make sure that there's alignment between them and the lead pastor, as we talk about these three buckets.
Tell me more, Christopher. Unpack that more. How would you I know you do that, so how would that play out in your context?
Yeah, I'm just so I think I think her name is Michelle that was just speaking. She was talking about the punting back and forth of making sure that there's endorsement from the lead pastor on her authority and responsibility. To me, I think it gets a little even more weightier when you're an XP that has administrative or organizational authority and responsibility, but you are also one of the primary communicators, and you're also given that additional sort of spiritual authority. And so I'm just curious about if there's others on the call that have had to navigate that alignment.
Anyone want to speak to that? Maybe no, Christopher, by the mutes that are going on.
I mean, I preach probably 24-ish times right now between the campuses. I'm preaching quite a
That's a
bit
lot,
on the main
Scott.
campus and the executive pastor. So me as the executive pastor, I think the reality for me and Brian though is I worked with them for 6 years prior to joining the staff, and we're extremely like-minded in a lot of different things. And so even the way that we would run the operating system, or I think the quote that was gold today, Lee, that you alluded to, was you let your vision and values drive your yes and no. And I think that even connects to what Michelle said, that every yes and no has an effect in some sense, and she's going to choose what matters most. But connecting that back to what Lee said, letting vision and values, Brian and I are very aligned in the direction that the church is going. And so we leverage the platform to lead people in the church the direction we believe the Lord is calling the church. And so we both do see it as a spiritual calling, like you're alluding to. And we understand that that's a leverage to point people in the direction of the vision, which then goes back to Kay's comment, allows us to keep our church, the church that the Lord is stewarding to us, to be in alignment of the direction we're going.
I think that's great, Snod. Thank you for that. I think that as we kind of start to land the plane here, I think one of the things that is the reality that we need to make sure and say is that if we don't courageously, but also with mission, vision, and values as a filter, if we don't courageously step into some disappointment, it will also become, and many of you experience this, kind of precedent setting. Right. So every time you respond in a way just to avoid disappointment, you're now adding a little bit more difficulty. The next time that scenario comes, it starts to make it increasingly hard for you to do that. And so here's the question I want to just leave you guys with is maybe just as a direct action point. You may need to ponder the rest of the day as you're going forward, what's one yes or no that you've been putting off because it feels harder than that you've been putting off because it feels harder than the disappointment that you're going to experience? That, in other words, you're more afraid of the reaction you're going to get or losing the approval of others than you are of making the right decision that will help the organization go forward. Only you can answer that question. And by the way, sometimes, we've kind of positioned this as a no conversation, but I would assume that some of you have experienced disappointment when you said yes to certain things, because your yes then becomes a no for something else. And so it's really more about where are we willing to stand on the wall, make the decision that keeps us aligned, and deal with the consequences and the courage of that, right? and or, as we said, the disappointment of that, and just know that and be willing to do that. Again, our goal is not to disappoint as many people as possible, but I do think when we accept this role of leadership and the high calling of it, that we need to be prepared to do that. Okay, you want to close us out?
I was just thinking about a phrase that one of my coaches said in my many years ago about disappointment. And he said that disappointment is often an appointment that we've made with the future. And so, as leaders, people often make these appointments for us with their agendas, with their thoughts, with their ideas, not understanding and knowing, the direction and the alignment of what we're trying to do. And so when we disappoint, when we actually do something or don't do something because we fear the disappointment, we're actually, it's perpetuating that appointment that they have made towards an agenda that's not even ours. And so all that to say, it's like, we have to be much more aligned towards where we're going and be able to make sure that those decisions are embedded in those values. So yeah, just wanted to share
Love
that.
it. Yeah, I'm gonna have somebody pray us out. Last thing, great conversation, by the way. If you missed the Monday Fuel, read it. You'll get this in your email either later today or tomorrow, depending on my speed. But one thing we wanted to do is a lot of you have mentioned that you're going to be in Vegas at the end of October for our Think Tank Live, but you have not actually engaged in. Okay, you have not registered. You have not actually clicked the button. One of the things that we really need to do from our perspective as we try to ramp up and prepare is if you are planning on being there, if you're planning on bringing your team, even if you can't be here, but some of your team is, we really in the next few weeks need to start assimilating that in and getting head counts on all of that. If you don't know what Think Tank Live is, you need to be a part of it. Kate just dropped the link in the chat. Basically, this year we're really going to do much more of this, right? Guided conversations with resources and relationships with people that you are doing very similar work with and ministry with, combined with some of the stuff that's Growmentum's core values, where you'll get a chance to replenish and refresh and recreate a little bit around Las Vegas. And we're going to spoil you in the evenings with some great meals and some great fun together. This is exclusively designed for executive level leadership. Could be 2 or 3 or 4 people on your team, depending on how you structure your team. But we would love to see you in Vegas. It's a Wednesday night start, Friday noon end, so it won't impact any of your weekends. We realize conferences, there's a plethora of them. There's a lot of options out there, but we would love to see you because we believe this is uniquely different in that there are relationships that will come out of it. You're not going to be in a big room just receiving. We're actually going to invite you to participate in the conversation on topics that are relevant to you. And at the same time, you're going to be in Vegas. You're going to have a great time. So the link is there. It's still early bird pricing. So if you would, we really need to, I think I'm being like, we really need to see what our numbers are so that we can plan accordingly. So help us out by doing that and passing it on. Okay. Really, really appreciate it. Rob, you've been quiet. 30-second prayer. Okay. 30-second, no Dave Thomas lingering in prayer today. Okay. We're just going to pray us out, brother. All right.
Wow, thank you so you got oh, there we go.
There it is.
All right, let's pray, everyone. Father, thank you for this time. Thank you for just the privilege it is that you've called us to ministry, and we get the opportunities to disappoint people at a rate they can handle. And so help us, God, to be wise and discerning as we do that. Help us to say a strong yes and a strong no when those times come. Thank you for Kay and Lee and this team. And God, pray that you would help us to be both productive and spirit-led. Help us to work in it and on it. God, we love you. We commit the rest of this day and this week to you in Jesus' name. Amen. Thanks, y'all.
You're muted.